Food has always just been a tremendous part of my life. Biscuits, for me, are just more than a piece of bread. That's how I learned how to cook. Wow, I didn't know that was going to happen. That's how I learned how to cook. My grandmother teaching me how to make biscuits when I was a little girl. And so I've been making the same biscuits literally since I was 3 years old. As a child, it was a great lesson. It was not only spending time with my grandmother, learning cooking basics, it's math, it's patience, it's all these things, and then it's also delicious. I am so fortunate because my life and my work and my career are all completely intertwined. I am typically a doer, right? I make lists, I check them off, I have deadlines, I can try to meditate, and I'm usually good for a little while, but then it sort of drifts off. Wait, I need to take a note on my iPhone, or oh wait, I gotta send that email. Except when I'm fishing. And when I'm fishing, all I can think about is that hook under the water. My family tells me the first time I caught a fish, I was so excited that I jumped out of my diaper. So I've been fishing a long time. My grandparents had a pond. It was just the most wonderful, magical place. And if they couldn't find me, I was down at the pond. So my grandfather, he taught us that we had to respect the water, that if a fish was too small, we had to throw it back. There was a period of time that the pond, for example, became slightly overpopulated. He would catch the fish, and in this instance, he told us that we needed to just throw them up on the bank. And he explained to me that there were too many fish right then. If I threw them up on the bank, that the raccoons would eat the fish, or, the animals would eat the fish, that it wasn't waste. It was really taking care of the ecology of the pond. Although my granddaddy did not use the word ecology of the pond. The connection between fishing and food for me is direct. I really have no interest in simply going fishing and frankly doing catch and release. What is the point of me yanking a fish that I'm not going to eat out of the water and disrupting that fish's life? I'm not catch and release, I'm catch and cook. As a human, there is not much more that can affect someone on almost a primal level of catching or growing the food that you actually eat. We have to pay attention to what we're eating. We have to pay attention to if there's this fish, this species is overcooked. There's an expression, eat it to save it. So if we create a demand for something, then that increases the awareness about that species, and that brings protection with it. I feel like it's my job. Part of the reason why I'm here on this earth is to help educate people about sustainable seafood, because I do have this passion that was instilled in me at an early age. It really does come from that 3-year-old girl and my grandfather explaining to me over the course of my childhood about taking care of the environment, taking care of the pond, respecting the animals. And if I can make a difference in one person's life, then I feel like I've had a success. I raise a glass to my grandparents and their pond, perhaps my favorite place on earth. I'm thankful to my grandmother for teaching me cooking and the grace of Southern hospitality. So incredibly thankful to my grandfather for teaching me about fishing and nature and the stewardship of our beautiful world.
Ever since I was little, I always knew that I wanted to work for myself. I was the kid that had the lemonade stand outside. I never really knew what that actual business was going to be, until I started cooking, and everything just sort of kind of clicked together. I really find joy in being around places where I can observe art, be immersed in art. It has so many ties in with food as well. And I do use art a lot to kind of make some of those connections and those bridges, because so much of the staff are working artists. They're also their own entrepreneurs, and it's so amazing to, be constantly immersed in this community. For me, food is a medium for self-expression. Art is a medium for self-expression and interpretation. But it's also really important that other people feel that they're contributing to what we're all doing here. for a woman of color to actually be a chef or lead a team, there just aren't as many opportunities. The only opportunities that I can, actually be a chef or be a chef owner is if I just went and did that myself. It's challenging in a good way because it's also a great opportunity to have, really meaningful conversations about how do we move forward and create more spaces, not just for women, but also for people of color, for people in the queer community, for people who are non-binary, for people who are, have been marginalized and don't necessarily feel safe in all parts of this industry. Food is such a large, pervasive part of our lives. The reason why food is such a connector is that it's this huge storytelling piece. I am Korean, I am American. For the younger parts of my years, I sort of fell away or pulled away from the Korean aspects, just because you live in America and you already know that you may look different and sound different. You want to try to assimilate as best as you can. I did myself a disservice by ignoring a really big part of myself. Food was such a great sort of catalyst. It just really opened my eyes and really kind of helped bring together sort of where I am at in my life now. Really being able to embrace the fact that I'm a Korean American. This is the food that I grew up eating. This is the food that I think showcases the storyline of where I am now. This is the first place throughout this entire time of my career where there's such a huge connection with the staff. It's palpable. When you walk into that space, you just absolutely see how much everyone cares about each other and cares about the food and cares about the guests and about the entire experience. And I think, that's so much of what makes this such a wonderful and special place. I raise a glass to the communities we create, build, and foster. Kombe.
Yeah, I think surprising people in food is kind of the best. In certain elements with certain kind of food, making people a little bit nervous is always good. It's kind of like that first kiss where they're nervous, but at the end it's really, really great and they can really sit back and relax and trust you at that point. I'm a very heady person. I spend a lot of time kind of introverted and in my head thinking of different things. I definitely think outside of the box quite a bit, and I think that's what's fueled my progression as a chef, and I think it's what keeps me moving forward with different concepts and kind of why I can't really stay still. What I enjoy most about mountain biking and being out on the trail is you get out into wilderness, so you gotta drive a little ways to get there, and the two worlds seem similar in that they're both really fast-paced. I think that actually when you get out, on a trail, everything kind of slows down. Your mind is really focused on one thing and one thing only. You don't have time to have your head race about the 50 million things you need to do later that day. I ended up in St. Louis kind of on a whim. So I was kind of obsessed with looking at real estate late at night on the internet and happened to run across something that said wine bar for sale. My now wife and I flew to St. Louis to check it out. Ended up signing papers on a little 1,500 square foot spot that day. 14 to 15 years later, we have 7 restaurants. 6 of them here in St. Louis and 1 in Nashville, Tennessee. Funny thing about the moment that I ended up winning the James Beard Award is that I think I had finally given up and thought that I would never win a James Beard Award. Even though I had been nominated over 7 times, I think it was such a surprise, such a shock. I felt a lot of relief, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but I think, I've dealt with a lot of stress over always trying to win and always trying to be quote unquote the best. feeling like your entire identity is attached to whatever award that is, whatever restaurant you're at, you know, you can sort of lose yourself in that. And then everything, your happiness, everything can really sort of get attached, defined by what your business does, which is rough because businesses are always changing and shouldn't be the reflection of who you are. You know, I think I struggled for a long time, dealt with a lot of depression and anxiety, you know, a lot of things that nobody talks a lot about. So finding healthy ways outside of work to deal with some of those stresses kind of helped change my perspective, allows me to kind of refocus myself when I feel myself drifting into bad spots. When you're on a mountain bike trail especially, you're constantly looking ahead, trying not to hit a tree, and so your focus is really not on whatever those daily stresses are. We're chefs and we're not all in the best of shape. You know, just getting out there and trying to take your mind off things in a healthy way has been life-changing. I raise a glass to finding a moment for yourself.
I go out on the water or just kind of nature as much as I can. Growing up in Colorado, my whole family was athletes. My dad and my brother are professional rock climbers, and my mom's a cyclist. Kind of moving to San Francisco and going a completely different path and working in a hardworking industry, I got a little bit FOMO of their lifestyle in Colorado. So it just gives me an urge to get outside as much as possible and see nature and get out of the city. I play tennis more so in Colorado with my dad pretty much every day. It's definitely, you know, a form of a workout, which is, you know, not lifting weights, but it's also, you know, getting your blood going and sweating, and it's, you know, a little bit more technical, I would say. I think it's important that you make time for yourself, finding a balance, especially if you're in this crazy industry, which is so demanding, so stressful. No one wants to live like that, and I've lived like that for a period of time, especially working as a line cook. I think it's very important to find balance, creating hobbies for yourself or doing things that'll make you happy. I try to get out of the city once a week, play tennis with a friend or go rock climbing, as well as, you know, play some music. I always loved going to shows, going to festivals. The last 2 years, I've been really interested in learning a little bit of disco, kind of house music, trying to create my own, which is a little bit harder than I thought. I'm still working on it. I've gotten to play like at another restaurant in front of a live audience. The energy of being on stage and playing something for other people. Kind of similar the way that, you know, you cook for someone. The relationship between cooking and music, one is a little bit nurturing, and then the other one, you know, just creating some sort of experience for them. I guess they're both creating an experience. What keeps me going and pushes me is making people happy, creating a dish that someone tries and it's something that challenges them a little bit. They really enjoy it, makes it all worth it. My big dream has always been this restaurant for the past 10 years. Now that I own the restaurant, I'm learning all the challenges that happen with operating a business. This dream is to keep on making this restaurant successful, keep on growing, keep on getting better and better. We were invited to this kind of Michelin party in Huntington Beach. It turned out to be a revealing of Michelin star of California. They started giving out these stars to places in LA and Northern California. Our name was called. My phone was going off. I started tearing up. I was speechless. It was pretty life-changing for me. It just goes to show, you know, working for 10 years, putting in those 12-hour days, 6-7 days a week, it kind of paid off. I raise a glass to everyone who's been supporting this dream of mine for the past 10 years, as well as every one of the guests who come into small restaurants like myself. Cheers.
For me, I have a lot of parts in my life that, I give 150% to all the time. Work is definitely one of those. Weightlifting, farming. I'm very passionate about what I do. To be passionate about something, you have to really give yourself to that, whether it's work or family. My interest in food started when I was very young. As soon as I could climb in a chair next to the stove with my grandmothers, I was cooking with them. My mom said she'd bring me home and sit me in front of cartoons, and she'd come back in the room and I'd be watching a cooking channel, and that was like preschool. My mother worked catering, so I was able to get a foot in the door and started out bussing tables. And within a couple weeks, I told the chef, loved to cook and wanted to be a chef, so they got me in the kitchen, and I basically assisted the pastry chef. It was a lot of like chopping chocolate and slicing cakes and doing a lot of mise en place. So the farm came about the same time the restaurant opened. First year I planted a dozen tomato plants, took the extra tomatoes to the restaurant, served them to some of the regulars, and they like freaked out. They were like, it's so cool that you grew this. My wheels kind of got turning, and I'm like, I could do a little more of this. So it's grown from those dozen tomato plants 14 years ago into about 2.5 acres now. Tomatoes alone this year, we planted 1,300 tomato plants. I would describe myself a little OCD, a little obsessive compulsive, a lot of attention to detail. That's why I always enjoyed pastry. It's very, very exact, very much a science. Lifting weights is definitely a big contrast from being in the kitchen, but it's still something you have to be really disciplined at. It's very, very structured, and you have to be very focused on what you're doing. But, compared to doing sugar work that's, very delicate and fragile, it's, heavy and throw big weights around. Definitely takes some stress away. It's therapeutic, relaxing. It's nice going out early morning and, seeing how the crops are doing, harvesting. You spend so much time planting and tying and spraying and nurturing these plants before you ever get any fruit. You're talking 8 weeks before you actually get the tomatoes from the plant. When I'm creating a dish in my head, I want to think about, what it looks like first, what the flavors are going to be like, the textures. A big steak guy, as you see from the cow tattoo on my arm. Grilled ribeye, doesn't need a lot of stuff going on it, just, salt and pepper and olive oil. I think most people are really surprised that my day goes from farming to the gym to the restaurant. I definitely say all the time, I wish there were 36 hours in a day instead of 24.
It's 100% all in, whether I'm at the restaurant and farming or if I'm with my family. I want my family time to be 100% as well.
I raise a glass to going all in and spending time with my family on the farm.